So you want to be a full-time novelist. Now, let's get real. If you are a writer, who doesn't want to do that, right? You get to quit your 9 to 5 jobs. You get to sit around, create stories, invent worlds, and pay your bills with nothing but your imagination. That's the dream, right? But what if I told you that recent surveys show that an author makes about $20,000 a year? So yeah, that number is pretty brutal because what it does is it brings a reality into our dream of creating a career as an author. Now, a few weeks ago, I made a video about when I got the call from a publisher, and I was very excited to sell my first novel. And what I want to do today is look at the publishing world itself, because it's really an unfair world. It's where a lot of authors at the top make a lot of money and the authors at the bottom make almost nothing. And then there's just a few of them in the middle that make a little bit of money. So there's not much of a middle class there. But of course, I'm not here to crush your dreams. What I want to do is help you to arm yourself so that you know what to do and how you can actually make your writing career into a career where you're not a starving author, but you're actually able to survive and make a living as a writer. So I want to break down the real numbers, the advances, royalties, the insane amount of time that you have to invest, and the strategies that actually lead to you being able to create a writing career. So the question is, can you really make a living as a writer today? And let's find out. You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world. Welcome to the Amante channel. I'm really happy to have you here. I am a women's fiction author and I make videos on Fridays to help you with your writing career. So let's first look at the income. Let's look at the money and how that works in publishing. So I'm looking at traditional publishing. This means that you go out, you send your queries to agents, to editors at publishing houses, and they purchase your novel and they produce it and they sell it. So they do everything after the writing. So the way that this typically works is that when they purchase your novel, you get an advance. And what an advance is really, it's sort of a loan. The publisher is estimating what that book is going to be, what that book is going to make, what it's going to be worth to them. And then they give you a little bit of the money that they think they're going to make off of the book. And so what you're going to be doing is when the book sells, you don't get any more money until you pay off really the money that they gave you. So let's say they gave you $5,000. The first $5,000 that come in, that is your part of it. So your percentage, you don't get it. They keep it because what you're doing is you're paying back the money that they gave you. Now, anything after $5,000, then you start to get royalty checks. Now, what can a debut author hope to make? $5,000 is pretty reasonable, but let's say that you're very lucky. You can make anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000 if you are well known or there's a niche you're writing in and they're willing to pay you more money. So the average advance for major deals, and again, average is about $57,000. And that number is seriously misleading because it's really skewed towards the higher deals. The median advance, again, for somebody who has a pretty good book that the publisher thinks they can really make a lot of money, is closer to 25,000. And again, really for a brand new author who doesn't have any following, who doesn't have any readers, you can probably expect closer to the 5,000. But let's take the $25,000 figure, okay? Just assuming that that's what you're going to get. First, your agent is going to get 15% of that. So that leaves you with 21,250. And then you get the last one on publication date. So this can easily take a couple of years from the time that you first turn in your manuscript to the time that they actually publish the book. So now that $21,250 is spread out over 2 years. So if we averaged it out 24 months, right, you're making about $900 a month. And this is before you've paid any taxes. And as I mentioned, you're not going to see a dime more until you earn out the money. So if they did give you $25,000, you probably won't see any more money unless your book, for some reason, really becomes super popular and it sells hundreds of thousands of copies. And then at that point, you would get royalties, and royalties are typically 10 to 15%, usually 15%. But that's on hardcovers. For paperbacks, you're probably looking at more like 5 to 8%. And about for ebooks, it would be about 25% of publishers' net receipts. If we look at this as an actual, what does this really look like, right? When an actual book, let's say you have a hardcover that sells for $28. You're going to get about $2.80 a copy. And so this means you have to earn out the $25,000 advance that they gave you. And so if we do the math for that, what is that? You're selling at least 9,000 copies of the book, which, you might think, okay, well, I could do that. I could sell 9,000 copies of my book. But Penguin Random House did a study, a survey where they looked at how many books how many books do authors actually sell? They tracked 3.2 million books, and only 1% of those books actually sold more than 5,000 books. So this isn't looking very good, is it? Yeah. So welcome to publishing. Now, for self-published books, if you are independently published, it's a little different because now you're getting all the money that you make, right? But of course, there are costs involved there too. So the median income for a self-published author is going to be higher, but they also have higher costs. So they have to produce their book. They have to pay for a cover artist. They have to pay for an editor. They have to pay for marketing. And that can cost thousands of dollars before the book has even hit the market yet. So yeah, royalties are higher. You can expect anything from 35% to 70%, depending on the deal that you make with Amazon and other distributors. But again, you have to be able to come up with the money to produce the book to begin with, and then you have to continue to pay money to market your book, to get it out to readers, to pay sometimes for review people to review your book. So it really does, the money really does, it does eat up what you eventually will make. So what's the takeaway here? Am I saying that you can't do this? No, I just want you to be aware of what the cost actually is. And so what this means is that one book usually isn't enough. You can't just write one book and expect to make tons of money, to quit your job, and to start writing full time. So the way that successful authors actually do make a living is that they write more than one book. So what I'd like to do is give you 5 strategies on what to do and how to do this. So the first is business. Okay, treat your writing career as a business. And this is honestly the biggest mindset shift that authors have to make, because authors like to think of themselves as artists and writers. And of course you are, but you're also in business. So you can't just think about the book and writing the book and reaching the audience, even though that is all huge part of it, right? But once that is finished, you have to consider this. Now it's going into the publishing phase, and now it's a business. Now it's my business. Here's my product, and I need to be able to produce the product and sell the product. This means understanding the market, understanding your readers, understanding your genre and what those readers in that genre want. You're going to have to learn about contracts. You're going to have to learn about intellectual property and your rights and marketing. You're going to invest some time in hiring people. So finding your cover artists, finding your editors, finding all of that. So that is part of what you're going to have to do is, create this business with all the people that you're going to need to help you run the business. And like any business, you're going to want to set some goals. Like what is it that you want to achieve? When is the next book going to come out? How are you going to handle your finances? And you'll want to make some calculated career decisions. So very different from writing. You're not waiting for inspiration. Shouldn't do that with writing either, but you're not waiting for inspiration to strike. You actually have to plan and have maybe a business plan of how you're going to handle the production and sale of your book. Okay, so first thing is making sure that you create your business. Again, if you are independently published, and obviously this is what I'm trying to steer you to, because you have zero control, as I just mentioned, with a traditional publisher. And you can't even guarantee that they are going to buy your second book. So you might have that one book that I talked about with that nice advance. If you even got that advance, most likely you'd be closer to 5,000. And then just waiting to hopefully that book does well and it earns out and you make the money, and then they'll actually buy a second book. But if you are self-publishing, you don't have to do that, right? You're just going to make sure that that first book is a success. Then we're going to go on to strategy number 2, which is write your next book. Have another product. You don't want to just rely on that first book to make all the money, because it's going to be very difficult to get noticed and to have a following with just one book. So it's said that, one book, a successful one book is a fluke, two books is a coincidence, three books is a beginning of a career. And then after that, hopefully you are becoming an established author. So since it's incredibly rare for an author to be successful with just one book, the way they become successful is they have a backlist. They have many books that they've already written that they can continue to sell as they sell their new books. So every new book, every new product, right, becomes another source of income. And the older books become an advertisement for the author. Look what I've written, look how successful I've been, look how many people have liked my book in the past. So this promotes you in a way because you have all these other books that are evidence of you being an author and of readers liking your work. And this can start to create a stable income for you because you'll start to sell every time that you write a new book, you'll sell those, and that will trigger people to buy some of your backlist as well, which again gives you more income, more steady income. The more books you have, the more likely it is that people are going to buy more than one and help you pay what you've already invested in those books. I'm going to go on to strategy number 3 now, but first I'd like to ask you that if you are enjoying this, if you're finding this helpful, hopefully a little more inspiring than how it started and encouraging, do me a favor and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so that I can keep creating videos like this. This channel is all about giving you real actionable advice that you can use in your own career. So you could really help me out if you hit that like button. Thanks a lot. Let's go on and talk about strategy number 3. And this is diversifying your streams of income. So you're not just waiting for these books to make you money, but you're finding other ways to bring in money as well. So the highest earning indie authors do not get all their money just from their books. Your books are your intellectual property, right? So these are valuable. You can use these to bring in other sources of income. So for example, just recently I went to the summer of 2025, I went to various writer events. I met a children's book author. She goes to these events, first of all, to sell her books, but she also gives presentations. She gave a presentation. She had a little doll that she sold with her book, and she had a bunch of other little things. Some authors will have stickers. They'll have other things that they're selling in addition to their book that are connected to the book, obviously, so that there was a connection to that doll in the book. So other items that you're also selling in addition to the book is helpful. Another thing is audiobooks. So if you can narrate your book or pay for a narrator to do it for you, this could be another potential way that people will have access to your book that like audiobooks. And so that's another source that you can, another thing you can sell, another type of medium for people to read your book. You might be able to sell foreign rights. So you can, very cool to have your book in multiple languages and pick up a German book or a French book, right, with your title and usually a different cover. But it's kind of fun to see that. And they will give you a percentage in order to get the rights to be able to print it in their own country. You could get film and TV deals. This is a stretch, I'll have to be honest. I did get one deal for one of my books. I just sold the option to the book so that they could make a TV program with it. And then it moved forward a little bit. I've talked about it in other videos. And then eventually, when it was time to produce it, they chose, they have various different programs for the year, and they chose a different one. And that was the end of the big TV deal. But it could be, getting an option on your novel is really nice because you do get a little bit more money as they consider whether they're going to move forward or not. And if they move forward, then of course, then you get a lot more money. You can also do things like Patreon or memberships where people love your writing, then they just want to contribute. So they're not really getting much. You give them things on Patreon, right? So they might be the first ones to be able to buy the book. They might get all kinds of other things that you offer them, some conversations with you or some personal connection, and then they're willing to really support your writing. They're supporting authors, which is nice. If you have other skills, like you could be a freelance editor yourself, you could be a freelance writer and write things for people, so you can kind of sell your writing services or your editing services. So that's another option. And then, like I mentioned, the merchandise. If you have any merchandise that ties to your book, sometimes that's really nice, especially if you do a lot of in-person events and you have opportunities to sell things and make a few dollars by selling other items in connection with your book. And you could also make like little packages as well, right? So they buy the book and they also get the stickers and they also get the doll and they also get other things that go along with it. They get this whole package of wonderful things. I think this really works great for children's book authors. But the key is to think like an entrepreneur because that's what you are, right? So, how else can you make money for your business, for your author business? It's not just the books, but what other products, what other things can you offer? And so, strategy number 4 is to master the publishing path. So just because I am obviously leaning towards self publishing, it doesn't mean that has to be your only avenue. You can do both. You can have traditional publishing where you're selling your book to a publisher, one book to a publisher, and you do get that advance, which helps you with your career. And then you also have your indie publishing, where maybe you're self-publishing a different book. If your traditional book does well, people may buy your other book as well. So keeping your options open, maybe doing some traditional publishing, maybe some indie publishing, so a hybrid type of situation could be useful and it could be a really good career plan. In fact, today most authors do a combination of both, especially if they came from traditional publishing. So they stick with traditional publishing because they already have a publisher. They've already worked with publishers. They really enjoy having the publisher do a lot of the work for them. Having an editor, for example, that you can bounce ideas back and forth with. Having a cover designer that's that the publisher has and that creates, you don't have to worry about that. So they do the back cover copy. We hate doing back cover copies. At least I do. But so having a publisher do that for you is wonderful. So a lot of successful authors are hybrid authors. They do a little of both, and they benefit from both publishing traditionally and independently. And strategy number 5 is to build a platform for yourself. It doesn't matter if you are traditionally published or independently published. You really have to take control of your marketing. The publisher is only going to do a little bit. They're not going to do everything for you. And in fact, if you don't already have a good following on social media, that's one of the reasons that a publisher may not purchase your book. So you want to have a strong social media following. You want to do a lot of the promotion, have connections with booksellers, and of course, build a direct connection with your readers. And that includes having a website, maybe having a newsletter, having an email list so that you can contact your readers directly and let them know when you have some good news, new books, where you're going to be certain places that they may be able to go to. And it's nice because you have complete control of these. It doesn't matter if the social media platform goes down or deplatforms you for some reason, then you can still contact your readers. And building a platform takes time. So even if you're not published yet, you want to start doing that because over time you can build the people. Now, I don't like to fake build my social media. So I don't put a bunch of people on there just to have a high number. Same thing with my newsletter. I would really rather have people that I know want to read my books or that are other authors that I want to connect with rather than having random people just so that my number looks high. I just don't think that's helpful. It's not going to help me to sell my books. It's not going to help me to grow as an author. Personally, that's just the way I feel about it. But there are definitely people who will just build a big social media platform with whoever. That could be a strategy. Again, that's not my strategy, but so I can't advise you on that. But it might work out. Like there might be some random people that you add on that actually do purchase your books, even though most books are not really purchased through social media, but it does help to build your name. So, I mean, we're all encouraged to do that. So, obviously, I do. I'm not a TikTok person, but I do Facebook and Instagram, just some of the other ones. But the goal is to make a casual reader into a lifelong fan by building that connection with a reader. So let's go back to my original question. Can you make a living as an author? And the answer, of course, is yes, but it doesn't look like that romantic dream that we have in mind of sitting on a mountaintop and just writing and not having any other obligations. First of all, we have a life, right? We have a life with family, we have a life with other things that are never going away. So you always have other obligations. So being a full-time writer doesn't mean that you have no other obligations. So you always are going to have that. But could you let go of your full-time 9 to 5 job? Possibly, right? It is possible by following the 5 strategies that I just gave you. But as you can see, it's a result of consistent work. Consistently working on your stories, writing more stories, building your readership, building your connection with your readers, doing a whole lot of smart business planning, and a whole lot of hustle. But it is possible and it's also very enjoyable. So you want to think about this as building a business, not just writing a novel. You want to diversify your income and you also want to create that big backlist of books, as I mentioned. So even though that median income that I started with does sound kind of scary, as an author, you can methodically build your income over time so that you actually are able to support yourself as a writer. So being a writer is an interesting path, right? It's not for everyone, for sure. Some of you may just want to write just for pleasure, just for as a hobby. But if you want to do it as a business, then you have to treat it as a business. You have to be incredibly patient and resilient and be willing to build a career over time. So if you are, then you're more likely to create a reality out of your dream. I hope that this has helped you and made you think a little bit more about the financial side. If you are an author, published author, and you have some comments or some input on the financial side of being a writer, then please drop a comment below and let me know how you do it and what successes you have had in the publishing world and in the world of writing. Thank you again for being here, and I hope to see you again next week.